All right, folks, it's time for Shiny Side Out with David Dunger and Necky. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. Take it away, guys.
Welcome to Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mackie.
Streaming live from the Revolution Radio Sydney studios. We want you to join us in the chat room at freedomslips.com and follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. You know, you can check out shinysideout.net for archives, show notes, and links we paste into the chat during the show, plus mugs like this awesome one. You have to buy one. Please buy one. You can listen to us on FM if you're in Kentucky on WZZR 101.3, or you can listen to us via an application on your smart device. There's a Revolution Radio app, TalkStream Live, TuneIn.com, Radio Tuner, and Spreaker. Very, very shortly, iHeart Radio. There's also Real Radio FM, which are all revolutions in radio. The number to call in if you are in the USA is 347-688-2902, or via Skype, just add Freedom Screen. And thanks to Solaris. You know, I just learned a whole bunch about the Masons on the previous show. Awesome.
Yeah, the Masons. The Masons.
The Masons?
the Masons. There's not a lot I can learn about the Masons anymore, I have to admit. I know all your secrets, including your last secret.
Insert maniacal laughter here.
But no, it's fascinating stuff nonetheless. Getting a refresher like this is always useful, helpful, and certainly timely. The Masons, in my book, are pulling on the same string as I am and Dave is. We all have the same end game in mind, I believe. There are others that have a different end game, but I think the Masons are firmly planted on our side. They might not know it. But trust me, you are.
They might argue against it.
I know. They would be wrong, though. That's okay. That's fine, you know.
They'd be wrong.
So, Dave, how have you been in this hot week that we've had?
Boy, oh boy, it's muggy. It's like a 98% humidity and high 30s, but it's not that terrible. It's not like it's 45 degrees and it's an oven. You know what's really funny? Queensland. I have to tell you, I've written some stuff down about this week, and it's all to do with freak weather around the globe. There is, and I'm going to paste these links into the chat room as I go because I think it's going to be really important for people. Yeah. So number one, the eastern US is under nearly 2 feet of snow. Now, I've been talking to Tones, he's part of the building, he's part of the infrastructure in Revolution Radio, and 2 feet of snow. That's just crazy. There's thousands of flights cancelled. Imagine the cost to the airlines. Right? Boston itself received the heaviest snowfalls of about 45 centimetres. That's just about 21 inches. And to add to that worry, just south of Boston, though, there was even a worry about coastal flooding. New Jersey and New York both declared a state of emergency, with schools and government buildings closed as well. But on the other side of the globe here in Australia, Queensland was only a couple of degrees off its record temperatures for all time, and they're sweltering in the 40-plus degrees across most of, maybe 85% of Queensland. So, and the solar radiation in Australia is off the chart.
Yeah, well, that's one thing. I mean, we do get hot weather here, guys. The sun does shine quite brightly. The key thing here is you will get burned. We said this before. You will get burned even on an overcast day. So imagine a clear sky, 48 to 50 centigrade or Celsius temperatures.
Like 114 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, that's hot. You will cultivate all kinds of skin cancers there. And if you wanted to, you could fry an egg on the hood of your car. That's a fact. You leave your car in that heat, you can fry egg on its hood. But you're right. And the thing is this. We still have a prime minister here who doesn't believe that climate change is real. Fair enough. Maybe it's just weather change. But until this week, you could have argued that way. You could have said, oh, yeah, these are microclimates. There's local weather that's changing. We spoke about this on our last show as well. And in this week, some more events has come through. We have experienced the hottest month. In fact, the hottest year on record. 2013 was the hottest year on record. That's globally, okay. Now that's actually significant. I mean, the temperature can go up here and it can go up there, and and that's all good. Fluctuations happen. If the temperature goes up everywhere, okay, everywhere, then we have some kind of shift we're looking at, right? And the strange weather that we've been having, all the associated natural disasters, I mean, you get heavy rain, you get mudslides, you get avalanches, you get, the shifting ice might even affect tectonic plates, which might lead to earthquakes, which might lead to tsunamis. So the weather could affect that as well. So I mean, think about it, right? You've got gazillions of tons of ice resting on the caps. You melt that, you shift the equilibrium of the tectonic plates, they move out of kilter, and you will have an increased number of earthquakes, which is exactly what we've been having, including sinkhole formations, which are unusual in their
around
magnitude
the globe.
And around the globe, sir. So why is that happening? Again, there seems to be some shift going on in the crust. Or maybe even some undercurrents that are washing away layers of rock and dirt under the surface. Be that as it may, there are a large number of changes happening across the globe, not here, there, and in small isolated areas. No, these are changes that are happening everywhere. Look at the European winter. Look at the American winter. Come on, there was snow in Egypt, right? We had snow in summer here as well in Canberra. These are things that didn't really happen very often. I mean, you get freaky coincidences or you get freaky events once in a while, and then you go, it's a freaky event. Fair enough. And I have no argument with that. You can't really formulate a theory on a freaky event. But when these freaky events become the norm, right? When they become the thing that you would expect, like that super typhoon in the Philippines, right? Hurricane season in America, tornado season. We're getting tornadoes here now. In Australia, we never used to get tornadoes. There's a whole bunch of stuff that is changing, right, Dave? I mean, if you want to close your eyes to it, be my guest, but there is something going on.
I have to give you some stats on this. Listen to this. Last year, 2013, we've just gone past it, Let's reminisce for a minute. In Australia, these are all the records that we broke for the hottest. We had the hottest day ever recorded, the hottest month, the hottest season, and the hottest 12-month period. And by December 31st, we had the hottest calendar year ever.
Yep.
The previous winner was 2005, which says to me that if the two hottest years ever recorded were 8 years apart, so the two of them in the last 10 years, I think it means something. Yeah, the only time we have had lower than average temperatures is with cloud cover. And that's the only reason we've had the lower temperatures is the cloud cover. I have to also state here that that we've seen. You talked, Mickey, about the difference, the freezing of the poles, and what could be the result of them melting or dispersing. Yeah, we know there's 2 miles of ice in the southern pole. And that's significant amount of weight. That lifting on its own would reshape the Earth. It would no longer be there; it'd be somewhere else. But those poor hapless climatologists on the boat that were going down to the Antarctic for measurements, right? That just kept going. They were climatologists. they were going down to measure the changes in climate. However, an abnormal temperature fluctuation. In fact, the coldest day ever recorded was only on one news broadcast in Antarctic, was what froze the ocean.
Yep.
It froze salt water, Mekki.
Look, and guys, if you're not familiar with the chemistry of it, that's quite a feat. Salt is usually added to things to break down the ice. So freezing salt water is no mean feat. But cold is not as sexy as hot, right? So the news don't get much out of cold weather unless it's catastrophic. And having the coldest day, they go, hey, yeah, coldest day. But the hottest day, you get bushfires and you get heat waves, and you get the nice shimmering effect in the air. Makes good television.
Lovely.
Having said that, the only thing that you could argue at this point is whether or not it's human-induced. Now, I'm not saying it isn't, and I'm not saying it is. What I am saying is that we're experiencing, not we, but most of the planets of the solar system at this point are experiencing a warming. So it's not just Earth. Other planets are also experiencing a warming. You can check it out for yourselves. Now, this, to me, would point to a larger factor, to a larger, I don't want to say culprit, but certainly some kind of trigger in this warming. We might be going through a funny, area of the Milky Way, which for some reason is hotter because there are gases or whatever, or the sun maybe is heating up, or who knows what. But it isn't just planet Earth that's affected here. So that's the only thing you could argue. You can't really argue anymore that there is no climate change. You'd be a fool.
It's funny that SJ has just put into the chat room, like every week we talk about this being an interactive experience. We've now added the video as an interactive medium as well, but SJ has just said only 3 of over 400 glaciers are adding snow. Mm-hmm. Remember, there's a glacier park that hasn't got a glacier in it anymore in the US. Oops. But I was going to say that
it's really cool.
I was going to say that the Earth has a wonderful system of air conditioning. There's multiple layers. The layer near the Earth is extremely warm right now. The layer above it is extremely cold. It's trending the other way. And the cycle between cooling from the equator to the poles, those storms are broadening. So what was only isolated in a small, maybe a 2,000 kilometer or 1,600 mile width going around the pole, at either pole, to mix the warmer air closer to itself to find equilibrium. We could, in fact, see ourselves with something like the which planet is it again, Mekki, that has the large storm?
Jupiter.
Yay! So Jupiter, we might see something. This is called the superstorm. Not the superstorms which are just isolated pockets, but there could be the growth of one of these which leaves one of the poles, because they've got the lowest isobaric measurements in these storms, equal to greater than maybe a superstorm at the equator. If one of those was to let go, or be able to generate itself, or become transition from a cold core to a warm core, we might see something so large that it traverses continents, like it continues around and around. One maybe.
And make no mistake.
Go ahead. Yeah. No, you're right, man.
No, I was just saying, make no mistake, this storm on Jupiter has lasted centuries. It's been there since we've been looking at it.
That's right.
If we had a storm like that, a storm system on the planet Earth that lasted for centuries, I don't think your wet weather gear is quite going to cut it.
And you couldn't. It's funny because you couldn't rebuild your house before it came around again.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we were to see the unleashing of one of these storms, because we saw. We've seen superstorms. The next thing is one that can survive crossing a continent. So if it was able to do that, or was moving fast enough and maintained its spin, maybe stayed in a warm area, I think that would be devastation. I read there was a book about the superstorm before they were, in the last 2 years before we actually had them. We hadn't had them before them. Otherwise, they would have just been storms.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't have called them superstorms. They've come all of a sudden. Yeah? So, I mean, you have to think about this, that we live in extraordinary times. I have to say that there's two other news stories which are really weird here. And it's the return of Comet Ison again. Yay. Who doesn't miss that thing, yeah?
You're still alive. Good.
Yeah. Well, the internet is all abuzz at the moment about Comet Ison debris due to pass by Earth or hit Earth on January 15th. Now, you do your research and come back to us on it, because I couldn't be bothered looking anymore. I don't. How many end of the worlds have we been through, Mackie?
All of them, yes.
Yeah, all of them.
Like recently, I'm going to start counting from 1999, right? There were at least 5 or 6 prophesied by various fringe cults, and not so fringy either. So there have been a good 5 or 6 end of the world scenarios. Something I discussed today at a barbecue, and then people said, "Oh, you said the world was going to end." I said, "No, guys, no. We explained to everybody, we hoped, that the 13th Baktoon was merely the end of an age, right? And then there's the 14th Baktoon. Hello, there you are. Hello, Mr. 14. Oh, what Baktoon is it? It's 13 Baktoon, right? So, so the point is, no, the Baktoon, or the end of the Mayan calendar, was, or the way people interpreted, was never really, in my opinion and Dave's opinion, was never really marking the end of the world, but potentially the end of a certain consciousness or whatever, or consciousness shift, which may have happened. Yeah. But not the end of the world. And this is the problem with end of the world scenarios. If you get it wrong, you lose all credibility. So I abstain from making predictions unless I'm 100% sure as to what might happen or not happen. I will give you this, though, and I've said the same thing to the guys. I warn people, and I say, look, when we are 3 meals and 24 hours away from anarchy. What do I mean by that? Well, essentially, everybody, 95% of the world's population, certainly in the affluent countries, are entirely dependent upon the system as it stands today, which means you get all your food, water, and so forth delivered to you. Okay, but I mean delivered to you, well, you might have to go to the supermarket and pick it up, but guess what? It's being delivered there from where it's actually made. Okay, your milk and cows do not grow in the supermarket. So what do? Well, not a lot. If the system breaks down and there's nothing delivered anymore, right? So if you got some food at home, great. You got some water at home, fantastic. You might even survive for a month. The problem is, what happens if it doesn't come back on? You are royally up the katuta, right? And that's not very good. So you need to be preparing yourself. That's something that preppers do. And you don't have to go overboard. But it's good to have your cars filled with fuel. It's a good idea to have some non-perishable goods stocked in your pantry as well. Have a good supply of water. In Australia, we're lucky. We're forced to have water tanks, which in my mind is a great thing. I live near the biggest water reservoir in Sydney, so I'm living here for a reason. And essentially, it can happen any moment, and it doesn't have to be something amazing. I mean, it could be a strike. It could be that maybe the extreme heat blows your electricity supply, which has happened in India and has happened in North America as well. Remember when your grid went offline? That wasn't so fun. And the thing is, you can't do anything about it in the States because it is so vast and so old that taking it offline would affect too many people. So you just have to pray that your system doesn't fall down altogether. Maybe there's going to be a disease. Maybe somebody's going to invade us. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's various reasons for why the system could just stop working. The Roman Empire, which lasted over 1,000 years, also ended. People seem to forget that things happen to come to an end. It's cyclical in nature, our lives, including our civilizations. Our way of life is not static, guys. It is not static. And I'll stop here. Otherwise, this will be a show about the non-static life.
But we don't live in a postcard, and I agree with you wholeheartedly on this one. But to segue from that into the last news story that I've got, I've been reminded this week about, a YouTube video was released this week. It was a news story, a YouTube video, of a partial collapse of a cliff face And I will paste this once again into the chat room for you. And this was over in England, Hastings Cliff, or a cliff in Hastings, partial collapse into the sea. It's pretty awesome. It really is only like maybe about 30 yards by about 70 yards big, and maybe only about 1 yard thick. But for what it did, I think it was pretty good. No one was hurt. But what it did, it reminded me of just how, well, it's a stark reminder, I think, to everyone of how the eastern US is vulnerable to Flores subsidence. Do you know what I'm talking about, Mickey?
Actually, I do.
Yeah.
It falls the okay. Normally, what you see is you've got the continental mast, and you've got the fairly long area of not so deep water, shallow waters, and then it falls down into the ocean basins, proper. The eastern United States has in fact very little of the shallow and a lot of the deep. Okay, so any erosion on the minimal shallow will immediately collapse several kilometers down into the Atlantic.
Yes, and so Flores is an island, a volcanic island, whose sides are extremely steep. So anyone looking at this on YouTube would see me motioning with my hands, and that the side facing the US is likely to subside sometime in the next few years. They don't know when. They know it's giving way. There's large cracks already opened up, and the sea floor is completely filled with debris from it. So it's happened before, and the proof is there. It's all over the place that all of New England, Boston, New York have all been inundated from the ocean many, many times before. So they've seen it in the sedimentary deposits inland a long, long way. So you don't even need a cosmic impact to devastate the eastern side of the US. That's all you need is Flores to subside. That would be equivalent to what we saw Fukushima. The Japanese earthquake from nearly 2 years ago. So just think about that. That's horrid, yeah?
Yeah, and you've got quite a few nuclear installations on the eastern seaboard as well.
As well as the millions and millions of people, Mickey.
Yeah, the people can be replenished, and I know that sounds callous. If
they can be replaced, yeah.
Well, that's how they look at it, the elite, So I do think about them, and I think like them sometimes. But if you've got a nuclear event, the land or the surrounding area will be useless for thousands of years. So and that's what we're looking at in Japan, I think, at this point.
But it gets better. It'll be uninhabitable for a long period of time, but it does get better. I mean, people aren't living around Chernobyl, but they're certainly living around Nagasaki.
Oh, look! Yeah. If you remove the top 5 meters of topsoil, absolutely, and you fly all of your water and food into the area, that's all good. But no, you're right. But having said that, Chernobyl, which happened in the 80s, I was in Europe when it happened. I think I told you guys, is still uninhabitable. Mm-hmm. And it will remain so for quite some time. So I guess the severity is different as well. You have to remember that both Hiroshima and Nagasaki were atmospheric detonations. So the bomb wasn't dropped and exploded on the Earth. Mm-hmm. It exploded in the atmosphere, which caused a large amount of the radioactivity, I guess, to disperse within the atmosphere and then settle over a larger space of the planet rather than just being concentrated on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Not that it didn't do enough damage.
But it was anyway, they were designed as ground effect, so to maximize the ground effect. Yep.
Correct. Whereas Fukushima and Chernobyl are land-based events, mm-hmm. meaning it is all there and it's still spilling out. This Hiroshima and Nagasaki were a one-time event. It spent itself and then dispersed more or less over the ensuing decades, whereas both Chernobyl and Fukushima are continuing to spew radioactivity into the rest of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're talking about an underground, what was it, underground nuke or underground something or other in Fukushima to try and arrest it. And it's like, oh, just stop it. I think I'm done. I really am. If they haven't fixed it after 2 years, they're not going to fix it. Did you hear they want to do an underground nuke?
Yeah, no, so good luck to you. It's just like backburning. No, it's not. It's not like backburning. No. Edgar Cayce, I think you guys are familiar with him, the Sleeping Prophet and so forth, did prophesize, or had this vision, I should say, when he was in his trance state, that Japan would sink under the waves in the near future. In fact, after Atlantis had been found, which a lot of people believe happened in the 60s when some ruins were discovered in Bimini, underwater ruins. Now, a short story long, which is my specialty, he said under the waves, and I always thought, well, that means Japan is going to sink into the ocean. Well, no, wrong. We spoke about this before. It looks like he may have meant, I'm taking a license here, radioactivity, because you have radioactive waves, right? It's a wave form, it's a frequency, and it would sink under that, and it certainly looks like it is. It's. I mean, they were talking about evacuating Tokyo if Building 3 is breached and the I guess the pollutants escape from there. So that's a pretty horrendous scenario, and Japan could very much be at its very end at this point.
I forgot one link, guys, just to wind it up. There was one link here to do with the climate change, and it was it's going to paste it into the chat room as normal. And it shows a map of Australia. It shows a map of Australia, which has very few. The two white bits on the map are the only two areas that maintain their average temperature. Everything else is above temperature.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's just crazy. I mean, looking at this comes from the department that was closed by the government because they didn't like what they were telling them.
Look, your news is not what we want, so we're just going to abolish it. And there are no more body bags coming out of Afghanistan. That's right. This doesn't happen anymore. It's crazy. That's what happens when you control the media. And I don't care who you are and what you say. Few people owning the media is a bad thing. We should know everything. And having the government close down a government department, that's crucial, I think. It's just mind-boggling. It really is.
Oh, and by the way, anyone who's watching me drink from my fabulous mug, the 500 ml, 500, it's 20 ounces, 20-ounce mug, you can get it on Zazzle. Go to our website, shinysideout.net. Anyway, Meki, I was going to say, what was...
Nobody eats so much coffee.
What is today's show all about? What are we going to cover today?
Well, we're going to cover a number of different things. Key thing here, something that really bothered me this week was the movie 12 Years as a Slave.
Oh.
Right, so...
yeah.
So, 1 second. So it's 12 Years as a Slave. Now, I've actually seen the movie. Ooh, how did I do that? It's just a miracle of the internet. And it is horrendous, yes. It's just like Schindler's List, partially true, partially not, in my opinion anyway. And the slave trade was a horrendous thing that happened in human history. Now, it wasn't the first time, and it certainly isn't the last time. And this is really where my beef is. We seem to have lost focus of the fact that today we still have slavery. We still have slavery. Slavery hasn't gone away. Yeah, okay, the United States don't really have slavery, even that could be argued though, but there is still slavery, and it's affecting millions of people, millions. So I find it interesting when people, think about, the past and, how we would never do this again and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sure. Same thing with, when you watch like a Holocaust movie, lucky we've moved on from that. No, we haven't.
Lies.
We haven't moved on from Rwanda, 1994, 500,000 people were hacked to death.
Yes.
In a space of a few months. Okay, you have the genocide that was perpetrated in the Balkans. Okay, you have the genocidal wars of Africa. and certainly you've got Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge, which killed 1 million people, and it's going on today and again and again.
Hey, Mickey, wasn't it in Syria as well? Who was it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, yeah
not recently either. Like about 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago.
You mean the chemical attacks?
No. They just started rounding up everybody they didn't like, and it turned out to be an entire civilization of people.
Yeah, that could be maybe.
It was racial cleansing all over again.
Yeah. Oh, look, absolutely. So we know it hasn't stopped, guys. So I don't want to talk about it right now because I want to, we can talk about what's happening in the show. But so slavery, yes, horrible thing in the past, still a horrible thing. We also want to talk to you guys about resurrection and something we didn't cover off. We've spoken about death and what it is, how hard it is to diagnose, blah blah blah, and we've also spoken about Christmas and its roots in pagan tradition, which I find fascinating. We're going to have a similar thing for Easter as well. So those are the things we're going to cover. Dave, what else were we going to cover today?
I don't know.
I think that's it.
I think that honest was it. Don't worry. I wanted to, because don't you feel like a slave, Mickey? Though we should go through the definitions of all these. Which one are we going to do first?
Yeah, let's do that. In fact, let's talk about that. But you're right, Dave, and this is the definition that's not here. But we are all of us, well, except for you guys that are living off the grid, and bravo
good for you
to
too, by the way. Yeah.
We are all wage slaves. I mean, I don't care how well you get paid or how well you're doing, by your relative standards within your society or your neighborhood or your circle of friends. You still sell your time for which I think can never be enough money. So we've been convinced that these funny little tokens that we have, paper or metal or whatever they are worth something, and we should do our best to obtain them. Now this is the long con. It's a long con, which has turned us, or most of us, into wage slaves. If you were independently wealthy, great, good for you. Then my hat is off to you. And if you're self-sustaining, even better. But yeah, Dave, let's look at contemporary slavery and what that means. So essentially, it refers to the institutions of slavery that continue to exist to the present day. Okay, and get this: the estimates of the number of slaves today, and we're going to throw a whole bunch of statistics at you today, range from 12 million to 27 million people. 27 million people. That's the population of Australia. To put it in perspective. Okay, so
if it was only us, you'd be okay, but it isn't.
Correct. And it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Now, apparently, it's very difficult to come by stats, and there's several initiatives underway by the UN and by others to come up with the stats. It looks like it's worth $35 billion. That's a lot.
Sure is.
And you know what? Mauritania, interestingly, was the last nation in the world to officially abolish slavery. And they did that in 2007. 2007. Mauritania abolished slavery in 2007. Slavery is not over. But what are the forms of slavery, sir? What do we have?
Wasn't that just? Didn't they just abolish the legal slavery?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Legal slavery continues. It's like. Well, how can I put this best? Look at the United States, and I have to because it's the best example. In the South, there was something that, for all intents and purposes, was apartheid, segregation. Okay, you can call it out anything you want, but it was in effect there was apartheid as it had been practiced in South Africa. Now, in fact, today you still have that to some extent. Okay, even the slavery was abolished in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. There were still different taps for blacks and for whites that they could drink water from. Different parts, or different restaurants, in fact. Different places to sit in the bus. Different places. Do you remember that whole thing with Rosa?
Yeah.
And I forgot. Yeah, so she wouldn't sit in the back of the bus. That caused a whole riot out down the south there, right? So that was just in the recent, 40, 50 years ago.
Rosa Parks.
Right? Yeah, and it was 100 years after the abolition wars, or the Civil War. The American Civil War. 100 years after that, it was still happening, and today it is still happening. Now, the slave trade has changed somewhat. It's no longer really race related. I mean, sure, I think it's more like a gender or even age thing these days, but it is still alive and well. And that says a lot about us as human beings as well. We seem to have this need to enslave others. I mean, this is not a new thing either. I mean, the Roman economy was built on slavery. The Roman Empire was built on slavery, and in similar ways, the American economy was as well.
There's no easier way to profit. There's no easier way to profit, is there? Really? Do you know in this country they still have people that are paid per row for picking fruit?
Oh, really?
Yeah, $30 a row, and it takes you 4 hours.
See, well, look. I mean,
I'm not kidding you. And who is it?
No, but
these are weary travelers.
Yeah, but imagine you didn't have to pay them if they were your slaves. Well, screw that, I'm not going to pay anything.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. So, and this is really the problem, right? So, this whole slavery mentality has been with us from the start, hasn't really left us ever, and there's a very thin veneer of civilization. We like to gloss over everything we do. Oh, it's a horrible thing happened in the past. No, it's not happening in the past. It's happening now. It is happening right now. Don't discuss a movie and discuss all the horrors of 100 years ago. Discuss the horrors of today. Get involved in the conversation of today. Do not, pontificate about things that we can't do anything about anymore. I mean, you can't wrong the rights of right the wrongs of 100 years ago. You can't. It can't be done. Everybody's dead. Everybody's dead. Okay? Focus on today. Focus on what you can do for the people that are, in fact, suffering these fates today, right? So it's a movie, yeah, great. It deals with something happened 100 years ago. Focus on today. Sorry, that was an outburst.
That's okay. So the different kinds of labor, like forced labor. Yes. So we've did you talk about bonded labor?
No, sir. I think slavery by descent would be the first.
Oh, I'm just trying to read from the notes, Mickey.
I understand, sir. so slavery by descent, you do the bonded labor. It's the form that's most often associated with the word slavery, right? So slaves descended of slaves. It stems historically from either conquest, where conquered people is enslaved, as in the Roman Empire, or from slave raiding, as in the Atlantic slave trade. So this is actually what happened, So the African, I guess, slave hunters or slave trappers would raid villages, and sometimes even villages would sell their people to those traders, also black Africans to some extent, and then sell them to the slave ships that had come from the United States, or before that from France, Great Britain. Everybody was part of the slave trade. Make no mistake about that. So that's that. The enslaved become their own social class or caste. One that may suffer discrimination long after they've been freed. This form of slavery is prevalent in the Sahel, which is the northern zone of Africa, particularly in Mauritania, where governments may deny that it exists, but it does. So the slavery and the caste separation of slaves is still very much a reality. Okay, it is still, and look, in America, it's still a class thing where a lot of analysis. I'm going to step on a whole bunch of.
Here we go.
But, so be it.
He's going to do it.
But a lot of white folk are still afraid of African Americans, and irrationally so. There's this mentality. Oh, they must all be criminals, or they're gonna kill me or do something. Well, it is actually guilt that's manifesting itself there, right? It's deferred guilt of your ancestors, where you've treated people badly, and those people are no longer slaves, but they certainly probably haven't forgotten what you've done. So
they pose to you as a threat.
Correct,
but it's only in your mind. They haven't done anything really. You don't even know them.
Yeah, exactly. But the truth is, it manifests itself in two things. One, opportunity, which is less for African Americans, by statistically speaking, and two, imprisonment, which is statistically speaking, there are a lot more African Americans in jail than there should be based on the number of people in population. Okay, so there are two things that are very, very true, and they are still affecting the people living in the United States today. It's after 100 years after the war, or the civil wars happened, and Lincoln freed the slaves. So it's not over. Sorry, go ahead. I think the next one is Dave.
The forced migrant labor. Is that right? Forced migrant labor? Okay.
Sure.
People are sure it is. People may be enticed to migrate with the promise of work, only to have their documents seized and to be forced to work under the threat of violence to them or their families. Illegal immigrants may also be taken advantage of without legal residency. They often have no recourse to the law, so they're not represented either. Along with sex slavery, which we'll talk about a bit later on, this is the form of slavery most encountered in wealthy countries such as the United States and Western Europe and in the Middle East. That's forced migrant labour.
Horrible. There's also something called bonded labor, and millions of people work today as bonded laborers, right? So make no mistake, it's the same thing. The cycle begins when people take extreme loans under the conditions that they work off the debt. Seems reasonable. However, the loan is designed so it can never be paid off, right? So let's say, I don't know, like interest rate of like 5,000%. And it is passed down for generations. So you are actually caught in paying back that loan forever. Right, and all your labors are going to someone else's benefit. That's bonded labor, and that's quite prevalent in South Asia, specifically like India and Pakistan and so forth, where you have factors that are complicating things like caste and such. Sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Just Maddie typing in. Okay, so we have prison labor. We know about this one. This is where you're captive. So countries such as China and North Korea use prison inmates as slave labour, and this labour may be a reason for their imprisonment in the first place. They might just, get all the vagrants or, hapless people walking along the street and lock them up for no reason. They just disappear, and suddenly they have a workforce. I know in this country, they were using, I think, the prison in Lithgow to produce things. You might wherever you are know that prisoners, I think in the US, were making license plates. We're all familiar with that. They even play that out in The Simpsons. Is that you know what I mean? The Simpsons, Mickey.
Yeah, I know. Just on that, before we move on, the thing is this: there's a big push now to privatize prisons, right? And for that very reason, because you have that labor force readily available to you, right? Not just labor force, though. I mean, these guys usually don't have any. I mean, who knows and who cares about someone in prison? Really, not a lot of people do. I mean, the civil rights groups, yeah, sure enough, and maybe even the inmates' families. But if you don't, what if you don't have a family, or what if you're alone and you're imprisoned? So there's a lot of people out there in prisons that have probably no one that cares for them and no one that worries about them. So they are perfect targets for medical experimentation, right? Other experimentation, in fact. We know that, yes, psychological. What about the outbound call centers? Totally.
I've seen that in this country too.
Yeah. Now, and again, you don't have to pay them a lot, because the thing is this. In fact, you probably pay them, 10 cents a day, whatever it might be, right? Which is not really a living wage. And you could argue, well, they're criminals. Well, yes, they are criminals, but you have to ask yourself, first of all, what crime did they commit? Number one. Number two, what are you doing to ensuring that you are rehabilitating them? I mean, are you or are you not interested in that? And I think once you privatize prisons and you have a labor force readily available, I think there's zero interest in rehabilitation. I think the interest will be to have more people in prison. Okay, so there will be two avenues for poor people with no other way to go. There's prison and there's the army. Okay, so those are your two options if you're really, really poor.
But Meki, what demoted them outside? Like, what demotes them enough to not have to pay them the minimum wage?
I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? What demoted them as humans? So certainly they're a human, right, and I would expect to have to pay them at least minimum wage, whether or not they get the money in their pocket or just into a bank account. So, if they were to leave, they would have something there. I think that would be the best thing.
It's a dehumanizing effect that it has. I mean, they're inmates, right? They're convicts. They're no longer necessarily treated as human beings. They're disenfranchised. They can't vote and all these wonderful things, right? So who cares what they think and what they do? So you now have, in the truest meaning of the word, you've got a slave population ready at your disposal.
And America has the largest one per capita, hasn't it?
America does, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
it's astonishing. It's unbelievable. In fact, but I don't know if the Americans are doing it. I know the Chinese are doing it, and there are fringe stories that I hear. But I mean, you heard as well organ mining.
Yes, that's right.
They're organ mining. What does that mean? Well, if prisoners die or maybe are executed, and without consent, their organs are harvested.
Yep. I saw a documentary on that in Chinese prisons.
Now that's horrendous. I mean, what? Let's say hypothetical, right? I don't want to belabor the point. Hypothetical. I'm a party official. I've got a rare blood type, and I need a donor. Very hard to find, and the person maybe that could help me doesn't want to. So what would I do? I'll just throw them in prison and take whatever I need. Thank you very much. Right? So that's happening, guys. This is not something that isn't happening, and it's part of the whole slavery thing.
Hey, Mekki, I want to. Can I touch the next one, please? Just for
please.
Mind the pun.
That's probably exactly. I was going to say it's probably a poor choice of words.
My father and I were watching the TV, and we were watching the border patrol show, and it was the customs office, and these two ladies, without getting myself in trouble, these two ladies landed, and they were from Southeast Asia. One of them was chewing gum like it was going out of business. I don't think I've even seen Mick Jagger chew that fast. Yeah, so they the customs people were a bit hesitant to let them in on face value, and decided to swab their bags and have them unpack and repack their bags and really give them put them through the ringer. But they turned out drug free, which was amazing. They not only did they turn out drug free, but they even lied. One says that they were cousins. The other one said that they weren't relatives at all. And until pressed, then agreed that I didn't know what family meant, though you've just used it in context. Good luck with that. But my dad said the moment he saw them, he said, sex trafficking. He said, these are girls that have been purchased overseas to come and work for the big boss here in Australia, to pay a loan off. So that the bonded slavery, but sex being their work of choice. So these ladies appeared in all intents and purposes to be part of the sex trade. And, this is the hard part. So sex slavery is the next kind of slavery, along with migrant slavery. Sorry, Mekki, go ahead.
No. I was going to say, in my opinion, maybe the most heinous form.
Yeah, because you can only imagine if I had to break rocks with a pick, and then it gets fed just a little bit, and then do it again tomorrow. That wouldn't be as bad as having to undergo what this job entails, being a sex slave. With you. Yeah. So it's rape all over itself. Yeah, but this time you feel compelled to have to do it, not for your life so much. Well, actually for your life, but perpetually. Like, it's not a one-time thing. Yeah, I'm sure you would just close yourself off. I can't imagine having to resuscitate a person again after having been through it. So, along with migrant slavery, forced prostitution is the form of slavery most often encountered in wealthy countries such as the United States, in Western Europe, Israel, and the Middle East. It is the primary form of slavery in Eastern Europe, Israel, and Southeast Asia, particularly in Moldova and Laos. Many child sex slaves are trafficked from these areas to West and Mid East. Now, we know that there's is it Bangkok, Mekki, that if you've got that 1,000 times on your passport stamped there, that you might be singled out by the feds.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, sex tourism is very big in Southeast Asia, of course.
See, that's the other side of the coin, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, but the funny thing is this, well, it's not funny, but it's a peculiar fact. I watched this documentary specifically on this, and I would have thought that the most the country most prevalent or most in connection with this kind of thing, especially child prostitution, would be somewhere in Southeast Asia. You know, maybe Thailand, maybe maybe Laos. Who knows? It's not. It is not. The most child sex slaves are in the United States. In fact.
Wow.
Of America. Yeah, that's the statistic. As horrifying as it is that's a fact. Now, this of course, and this interesting enough that the next form of slavery is related to this. It's the early or forced marriage, and that's mainly driven by the culture in certain regions. Early or forced marriage is a form of slavery that affects millions of women and girls all over the world. You might have heard on it on TV and on the radio or whatever. You know, these young girls that are being forced to marry, maybe 10, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, whatever. When families cannot support their children in those cultures, in those countries, the daughters are often married off to the males of wealthier and more powerful families. These men are often significantly older than the girls, and we're talking like 40, 50 years older. The females are forced into lives whose main purpose is to serve their husbands. And this oftentimes fosters an environment of physical, verbal, and sexual abuse, which in my mind is just another form of sex slavery, really. If you know, I mean, with the family's consent, which maybe is worse in some ways. I don't know, but because there's definitely no way out there because the family is condoning it, right? There's no one looking for you. There's no one trying to get you out. Right?
Yeah, no, that's completely
accepted.
Yeah,
it's horrible. Horrible.
Yeah, that's right. It is already accepted, and you're right. No one's going to come looking for you. I think that. You know, what are these? These are soul destroying. Yeah. They're all soul destroying, and if you can fight off the chains and the mind pun and get out there and leave it, you know, you're better off. Mekki, what was that family in England who had the two ladies from the 60s?
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, what's up with that? I mean, in plain sight. I mean, there's this family, yeah, absolutely, in England, and there was the guy in America who now killed himself in prison, who kept these girls for years. I mean, what is this? What's wrong with us? I mean, what is wrong with us? I mean, I don't think there was any sexual abuse, but they kept them as workers in the house, right?
Yeah, so, they haven't told us what happened, right. But that could be part of it. But certainly the one in the fellow in America, yeah, who capped himself, yep. He had, and that's just it's appalling, yeah. So, right. Going from the sex part just to the labour part, the child labour. So children comprise the majority of, children comprise the majority of slaves today. Most are domestic workers or work in cocoa or cotton or fishing industries. Many are trafficked and sexually exploited as well. In war-torn countries, children have been kidnapped and sold to political parties to be used as child soldiers. Forced child labour is the dominant form of slavery in Haiti.
Yeah. Do you know, I watched a documentary of, it's actually computer mining. All computer equipment has got a lot of valuable components, metals, specifically gold and others. And in India specifically, there are these vast pits where these computer parts, components are molten down or exposed to certain chemical processes to mine the gold or platinum or whatever else is in there, like rare earth elements. And it's usually children that work there without any protective gear, without any breathing apparatus, toxic fumes in the air. And you got to ask yourself, well, that doesn't seem to be the best way to live. It's really, really horrible. But I mean, okay, so how does this all happen though? I mean, there's trafficking, and this is really where it comes to the crunch. I mean, people have to move from country to country to become slaves for the most part, right? Now, according to the United States Department of State, an estimated 600 to 820,000 men, women, and children are trafficked across international borders each year. And approximately 70% are women and girls, and up to 50% are minors. Okay, the data also illustrates that the majority of transnational victims are trafficked into commercial sex exploitation. However, the alarming enslavement of people for purposes of labor exploitation, often in their own countries, is a form of human trafficking that can be hard to track from afar. it is estimated that 50,000 people are trafficked every year in the United States. 50,000 just for labor exploitation, guys. So it is the traffickers, right? I mean, the slave trade hasn't really changed. You get your slaves from one place and you make them work somewhere else. And
for a profit.
For a profit. And if it's your bad luck that you're caught as a slave, well, that's just bad luck. And that's I guess, where the movie 12 Years as a Slave is interesting, because the gentleman who was portrayed there, is a true story, by the way, was living as a free man in New York, and was not a slave, but he was kidnapped, and sold into slavery in the South, and then lived as a slave for 12 years. So. And I guess it's interesting because he was free, and then this was taken away from him, and it could just happen. It could just happen. The thing is, it can happen today. I know there's some movies out there that you may have seen, such as Taken, for instance, with Liam Neeson, which deals with that to some extent. Other movies as well, where yes, I mean you people could be taken. I mean, how would you know? I mean, if your child is traveling overseas, right, backpacking. Go to a hostel. Maybe someone slips them a roofie. They're knocked out. Who knows what can happen?
South America comes to mind. Spain comes to mind as places with less security. One of the names, Mekki. What about Madeleine McCann?
Yes, absolutely, and that's still unresolved. Do you
remember? There was also they were named afterwards, but when the story was released, it wasn't a gypsy couple. It was just a couple were found to have a child that wasn't theirs.
Yes.
And then I think a week later, they were described as being gypsies, but no, I'm not putting gypsies down at all. I feel that could happen in any circumstance, but they really had no explanation that suited, and they weren't any DNA resemblance of the child. And it stood out quite significantly. So it's something, because all of the police agencies around the world are looking for Madeleine. That anyone who doesn't sort of fit the bill is going to be scrutinized. So I feel sorry for anyone who falls into this. Who's either in the Taken scenario where you're a famous person and someone takes one of you for money, for extortion. Or they just sell the child on, you don't play ball right, it's gone. Yeah. How about also the missing people around the world?
I was going to say, you're absolutely 100% correct, sir. 100,000 people go missing in the States every year, right? I mean, for various reasons. 100,000. Now, if you on global scale, it's much larger. Millions go missing every year. Okay. Now, some will be sold into slavery, others to a fate a lot worse than that. And this is where it's touching on the more fringe topics that we want to discuss with you as well. I mean, you can actually... is the hour up already?
Yeah. We'll see you at the next hour, everyone. Hang on tight, Shiny Side Outers, for the short break.
Okay, you're back with Dave and Mekki's Shiny Side Out on freedomslips.com. Sorry about that. There seems to have been a double break, but we're back with you guys. So here we are, and that's right. It's the #1 listener-supported talk radio on the net. The #1 listener-supported. What does that mean? It's listener-funded radio. So if you like what you hear, please go to freedomslips.com and push the donate button on the site support page. It's on the left in the chat. Your donation is greatly appreciated and helps run this station. And in fact, Dave and I do donate as well when we can. We are halfway through show number 97, and we're talking about slavery at the moment and the resurrection in a little while. Dave, are you with me?
Yeah, I certainly am. Do you know, I was looking at myself not being able to put the slide deck up for the break. I wanted to make something up for that. It should look pretty nice. However... I was thinking to myself, and I don't know, blame the coffee, but I thought maybe if our ratings ever go sour, I could, do the crazy old man, the old grey mare, she ain't what she used to be. I could do that dance, anyway, you had to be there. It's all in my head.
It's a scary place, but that's all good.
Hey, Mackie, I just want to fill in something just for 1 second.
Yeah.
I've been away up the coast, as you know. Last week I was in Byron, and anyone seeing me, I'm not a pasty white IT guy anymore. I'm a brown tanned one. Very strange appearance. It's almost like I've been to a tanning salon. But I have to say, the next door neighbour up there, I ran into a fellow, and he is, now I'm going to be wrong, however I look at this. Is it a psychologist that fixes people's broken brains? It is, isn't it? You know where I'm going, right? Well, anyway, yeah. So, I flicked in my card. It's got SSO written on there. He flicked it backwards and forwards, looked at both sides. It's a double-sided card. And he looks at me. He gives me a look. Like, uh-huh. Yeah. And he went on to say that he presumes all of his patients are wrong. I think he said that his friend says that. His other workmate, a workmate of his, a friend of his in the same industry. Not he. I should be very careful. He didn't say it. It was his workmate that he said it, and he said that's a really good stance to take. You come from a skeptic's point of view. So if someone has an OCD and they say, I can't leave the house because the light is on, and he said, well, you're wrong, because you can leave the house if the light is on. It'll just mean the light's on. Where's the problem? I think he had a really good standpoint. And then we talked about a lot of stuff, Anunnaki and, the Bible and 9/11 and JFK, you name it, Mackie, I talked about it. And I even talked to a science teacher about, a psychiatrist, thank you, Jerry B. And I spoke with a science teacher about the quantum entanglement through the laser that went through the fiber optic system. Remember that experiment in Europe?
I sure do.
Yeah, and I talked to him about that, and I blew his mind. And it's funny, he reached over to a bookshelf next to him, and he opened up the, not Carl Sagan, Carl Kruszenowski, Dr. Carl's book.
The guy who knows everything, yes.
Yeah, he does. The latest book, and he opened it up, and he goes, aha, yes, you're telling the truth. He used Dr. Carl's book as the truth anator. I was saying, I said something else. Yeah, I said something else, and he doesn't do science. I said something else, and he picked the book up and went, yes, you're telling the truth. I said, I know I'm telling the truth. Read more of the book. Read the book and tell me something. Yeah.
But yeah, well, my point exactly, right? I mean, here you are, just some dude. Well, no offense, right?
Yep.
And I'm just another dude.
Yeah.
And this guy, his job is to teach this stuff, right?
Yep.
Now, shouldn't he be? Well, I guess you get jaded, with the whole system, and that's a bad thing when you're a teacher. But shouldn't you want to know the latest sciencey stuff to teach your pupils? Wouldn't that be a good thing? So everybody is on the same page and not 50 years behind. What's a transistor? I'm not sure. So
when I told him about light clumping together, he said, "What? There hasn't got any mass." I said, "You need to redo some research."
Yes. Yes, sir.
I just couldn't believe it. Like they're frozen in time. It's like you chip out of a glacier, a scientist, and said, "Oh, look, we've got ourselves a scientist from the 50s. Awesome. Let's show them something and make their head explode." And their immediate reaction is, "It's not true.
It can't be possible. It never can go faster than 60 miles an hour. All the air would be sucked out. We know that."
That's right.
Now the problem with that is, and that's exactly the problem. Now the problem is this: human beings are fundamentally lazy. I mean, even if you're not lazy, it's very difficult to know everything and keep up with everything in whatever your particular field of study is, or your field of expertise. I don't care. Very, very hard to do that. So it is a lot easier to maintain a static position until you're forced to give up that static position. We spoke about this. It's too expensive to change textbooks. It's too expensive. Not it's not that it shouldn't be done. No, it's just too expensive. Yeah, it's all wrong, but it's just too expensive to change it. So let's keep teaching people all the wrong things. So that's the problem with human beings and us. So we're not attacking science or scientists specifically. We're attacking the status quo, the static environment. Science, by its very nature, cannot be static. It's constantly, it's knowledge. It's the art of knowledge. It's the study of knowledge. It's the increase of knowledge. That's what science is. There's nothing else to it, right? That's all it does. It just gets more knowledge, and we analyze it and get more stuff from it. So when you stop it, then it's no longer that. It becomes dogmatic. And dogma is religion, because religion doesn't change. Okay, so you have a choice here. Either you go do your science thing, or you do your religion thing. You can't really mix the two too much, right? Because they've got very different requirements to them. But Dave, perfect. Then thank you. Yes, that's horrible, isn't it? Isn't it horrible? I think it's horrible. It horrifies me.
Well, when I said to the psychiatrist up there, he says, you know what, I might have a listen to your show for pardon me for this, but it's a quote, for shits and giggles.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
And I thought, you know what, is that really the right way to approach it? Because, we did talk about UFOs and the likelihood of there being life out there, and I said, you're not alone if you think there is life. And he said, mathematically, I suppose it's true. I said, well, that's where everyone else is. Everyone else is in the camp that it's mathematically plausible. In fact, right now, if you don't believe that there's life out there, you're in the minority. Mm-hmm. Because of the mathematics involved in it.
Absolutely.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we keep finding planets. That's the thing, right? It's not... it's a very clever science. You look at the relative brightness of a star when the planet passes in front of it, and it's great math and all these wonderful things. So I've got a whole lot of respect for that. But it's showing us there are a lot of planets out there, and there are a lot of very, very strange solar systems, very strange planetary systems. Even single planets that just exist on their own. So the world, sorry, no, not the world. The universe is not just our neck of the woods. Mm-hmm. It's a very limited view that we have here, right? Unless we go out there and see what it's like out elsewhere, we can't really talk about anything. So we just pontificating from an armchair like Lacey or whatever her name was.
That's right.
You people, don't you people science anymore? Yeah,
that was Lacey Green, was it? Lacey Green.
Lacey Green.
Yeah, I tagged her in that video, by the way.
I know you did. I saw that. My favorite person in the world right now, I have to say. I mean, just the this I don't know, self-confidence, is that what you call it? You convince Selbstbewusstsein in German. It's like unheimlich. She has a great Selbstbewusstsein. She's very full of herself. Is probably the best translation. I'm the best, and you're just not non-sciencers. That's what you do, non-sciencers. Let me get back to the stats though quickly, because we do want to talk about resurrection as well.
Oh, I have to ask everyone, please go to Spreaker.com. If you're in the chat room right now, click on the link. You don't need a Facebook account. You can use your own email address. Click on Spreaker and hit like. Okay, we need you to do that. That way we can get onto iHeartRadio. Very important. Yes. All right, I think we're at 177, 180. We need to get 300. Let's do it, guys. Come on. All the shiny Sciatas. I know you can do it.
Yeah, and I know we can only do it once. But if you've got several IP addresses, you can go as many times as you like.
Very nice.
Just a thought. So there are more stats, and we're going to throw a few of these at you. We've already spoken about this. There are 27 million people that are probably enslaved today, which is horrible. It's about 800,000 people are being smuggled across borders, international borders, every year. 800,000 people. 800,000. That's the population of a fairly large city. Guys?
That sure is.
Just to put it in perspective. Dave, how many children are exploited globally every year, do we think?
Look, it has to be 1 million.
And I think you're right. That's 1 million. 1 million.
We're not making this up, guys. We have show notes.
Guys, this is no, we do, and they'll be posted, and you can look it up for yourselves. I mean, words fail me when I think about it. It really does.
Did you know where the source of that was, guys? 1 million was the number of children exploited by the global commercial sex trade every year. that the source of that was the U.S. Department of State. And it goes on the facts about child sex tourism in 2005. That was.
It's horrible. 50% of transnational victims are children, right? 80% of those victims are women and girls. 70% of those women and girls are trafficked off into the commercial sex industry, which means 30% are going into forced labor. Again, these are hard stats. Probably wrong. Probably too low.
Do you know what? There's 161 countries identified as affected by human trafficking. 127 of origin, 98 transit countries, and 137 destination countries. But
a lot of
countries may be counted multiple times as categories and not mutually exclusive. So some of those may be involved in each of being the origin, the country, or the destination.
But there are a lot of, you know what this means? That a lot of people are looking the other way. A lot of people are being bribed. A lot of people are doing the wrong thing. There's a quote. In order for evil to triumph, all it takes is for good men and women to do nothing. That's it. That's it. And for me, this is evil.
Yeah. When someone is demoted from being a human to being a slave, because that's what it is. Don't mess about with words. It's being demoted. If you think you're better than someone else and you enforce that on them, I think that certainly paints your picture for you. And that's what these people are doing. These people are doing it for profit. And we've talked about, globalization and countries just moving, the cheap labor around. But at some point, it's going to lose. They're going to lose. All the countries involved lose. Now, this is the same thing for these. These people, for the rest of their lives, what's a life worth? Is it worth this?
Actually,
when I grew up,
question.
Yeah, it is, because when I grew up, I had friends of mine that were being forcefully married together. They would go home to their countries of origin, and they would come back married to someone. And all my friends were male. They would come back with a bride. And I thought, well, what? But you didn't choose. Oh, no, I've always known that's the person I'm to marry. From when I was 5. And it's like, well, what? Heck, but that was not my culture.
You have to get them young, though. You have to get people young and get them to accept whatever it is you want them to accept. Whatever it is. I don't care what it is. Yep. A free person makes a much worse slave than someone who has been born into slavery. Similarly, religion. Similarly, with anything, any ideology, anything that you want to do with anyone, if you do it in childhood, that imprints them for life, right?
Yeah.
It's very difficult to change. I mean, of course, you can break someone's mind. Of course you can, but it's a lot more effort. A child is a blank slate. It's a sponge. It has no preconceived ideas, unless it remembers like a reincarnation or whatever. But the point is, you can take a child and make it into whatever you want. That's really scary. But I want to quickly just say something, because you said, what is the worth of a human life, right? And we actually have a little item here which was coming up a bit later. But since Dave mentioned it, now this is a very disturbing fact, I think. The average price of a slave has decreased. Now, the average price of a slave has decreased during the past 200 years, according to Kevin Bales, a leading abolitionist who has written several books about modern-day slavery. Kevin Bales, look him up. In 1809, the average price of a slave was $40,000. That's actually pretty hefty, right? Adjusted to today's values, right? So if you were to buy a slave with today's money, it would have cost you $40,000. That's like the cost of a mid-sized sedan. In 2009, 200 years later, the average price of a slave was $90. $90. You can't even get a beat-up bike for that anymore. Now but to me, that says that human life has just become very, very, very cheap, even in the slave context.
That's not even fair,
isn't it? Yeah, I agree. It's horrendous. I mean, this is, let's talk about the traffickers, shall we? 52% of those recruiting victims are men, and 42% are women. Okay. In 54% of cases, the recruiter was a stranger to the victim. 46% of all cases, the recruiter was known to the victim, like in a village, maybe, who knows, maybe even a family member. The majority of suspects involved in the trafficking process are nationals of the country where the trafficking process is occurring. So these like okay, a Moldovan will traffic Moldovan girls.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
And Micah just
like
so
agents.
that's yeah. So these are not foreigners going into these countries and doing these things, right? These horrible things, and they never were in the olden days either. Okay, the slaves that the Americans bought and brought back to America from Africa were caught, captured, whatever you want to call it, by Africans. Okay, I'm sure Europeans helped, but the Africans, if the Africans hadn't been complicit, there would have been no slavery. Well, very limited slavery, I should say, right? And slavery before that, Roman Empire slavery, you conquer a nation, you take all the people and sell them to slavery. It was horrendous, horrible. You think the Roman Empire was some kind of romantical, place when we can
toga wearing,
no.
no.
Not even close, right? Watch the TV series called Rome. It's still sanitized, but it might get you somewhere. And there's some excellent books on the subject as well. Now, profits, Dave. What do we know about trafficking profits?
Well, I wonder. The estimated global annual profits made from the exploitation of all trafficked forced labor are, in US dollars, $31.6 billion. Of this, $15.5 billion, which is 49%, is generated in industrialized economies. What? That's friendly nations. US,
Yes.
$9.7 billion, which is 30.6%, is generated in Asia and the Pacific. 1.3, which is 4.1%, is generated in Latin America and the Caribbean, and it goes down to 5% in sub-Saharan Africa. 4.7%, which is the remainder, is generated in the Middle East and North Africa. Think about that. 49% of all of the exploited people, the wealth generated of that is in the industrialized economies.
Yeah. This is another thing of empire, guys. Now, and this is drawing the bow again that we try to draw for you over the last 97 shows, soon 100 shows. The empire never went away. The empire just moved. Okay, the empire moved geographically, and right now the empire is residing for the most part in the United States, with view to move again. It's split. It's in London and New York, if you want to argue the point, and to some extent in Paris as well. But the empire is still there. The same people are running it, and it's off the back of everybody else. We are enjoying a fantasy lifestyle in the West, or in the industrialized nations, if you will, on the back of 70, 80, maybe even 90% of the rest of the planet. Okay? Our empire, and we're part of it in Australia because, we're the coalition of the willing, we are guilty as well. Our lifestyle is what is required to keep this empire going, and vice versa. It's like a vicious cycle. That's we're parasitic of each other, the empire and us. And slavery, sex slavery, labor slavery, whatever you want to call it, is just a component part thereof. All right, big money to be made there, right? Someone is making that money. Someone is buying a yacht with that, or chalet in Switzerland, or a house by the beach in the Caribbean. Someone is making that money. A lot of that money will flow into Wall Street, just like drug money. Make no mistake. This is one of the aspects of empire, slavery. Okay, I know this is maybe too much for some of you, but unfortunately, that's exactly where we're at. The empire has never gone away.
Hey, Mackie, do you mind how many people have been caught and prosecuted for trafficking?
Very, very few, in fact, sir. Now, these are all statistics that we found here for you guys. In 2006, and the numbers wouldn't have changed too much as far as trafficked people is concerned, there were only 5,800 prosecutions and 3,160 convictions throughout the world. That's global. That means, if you do the math roughly, for every 800 people trafficked, only one person was convicted in 2006. Okay,
That's unbelievable.
It's horrible, sir.
Mm.
It's horrible.
You know, today every country has a law against slavery, right?
Mm.
And there's between 14,000 and 17,500 people are trafficked into the US annually. Mickey, what's another stat?
As we said earlier to you guys, the cost of a slave used to be $40,000. In modern slavery, the price of a slave, according to this source, between $30 and $90. 600,000 to 800,000 people are trafficked, right? And according to United Nations, sir?
Yeah, profits from human trafficking, rank it among the top 3 revenue earners for organized crime after drugs and arms. Like, this is huge.
Yes, it is. It's look, and the shiny side out is not just about conspiracy. I mean, even though, you know, that's where we largely live, it's also to shine a light at things that needs shining into, and we've got a fairly large listenership, I think, at this point. So I need you guys to think about this. Dave needs you to think about this. This is not good. This is a horrible, horrible thing. There's an article from the Guardian Weekly, and it's a left-leaning English newspaper, which I read as well. And it's shocking. It's in fact October 2013. This is where we have taken this article from. I'm just going to give you a brief summary of this. Again, there are 29 million people living in slavery today, and this is according to the first index to attempt to measure the scale of modern-day slavery on a country-by-country basis. The index, which was published by the Walk Free Foundation in October, ranks 162 countries and identifies risk factors for enslavement and the government responses. The research found that around 10 countries hold about 70% of the world's slaves. 10 countries, 70%. India has the highest number of people enslaved in absolute terms, approximately 14 million. 14 million people. China has roughly 2.9 million, and Pakistan about 2 million people in slavery. Now, lack of data, of course, is an issue, and that's acknowledged in this article here as well. Nick Grono, who is the CEO of the Walk Free Foundation, said, "There is no index out there, and it's critical to measuring the scale of the problem on a country-by-country basis because that informs policy responses. Measuring a hidden crime is very challenging, but there are efforts to measure domestic abuse and drug trafficking. A lot of it boils down to taking the best data on reported issues and then looking at the scale of the unreported or dark problems." Now, this is really the issue, guys, and make no mistake, that much money, billions, we're talking billions here, right? That much money, a lot of high-ranking people are involved. A lot of people are looking the other way. A lot of forms are being stamped when they shouldn't be. A lot of palms are being greased, and a lot of people are profiting from this. It's profiteering, in fact, from this horrendous thing. I mean, okay, the drug trafficking is bad, and then arms trafficking is bad. Human trafficking is the lowest form of I guess enterprise possible in my mind. Taking another human being's life and rather than cleanly, I guess, killing that person, right, which would be, I guess, a mercy in some instances, you would then spend decades exploiting that person to your own gain. Who gives you that right? Who gives you that right to take a person's life and destroy it and profit from it?
Well, certainly not the person involved.
No, some crimes are unexcusable. And if I were ever to be elected into power, I would bring back the death penalty to Australia. I know that's, again, a horrible thing to say. Some crimes are beyond excuse and beyond redemption.
I just want to say to, in the chat room, by the way, Mackie, you've got a question there. Is the speaker a German?
Yes, I am. some of you expect. Sorry, who asked this? Sorry,
that was Noodles 5465.
Okay, Noodles. Yes, Noodles. Noodles. I am. I was born in Germany, and I came to Australia 26 years ago. So there's still a lingering German There, I can see your question there. Yes, yeah, absolutely. That should not detract you, though. Not all Germans are without humor, or it's true. It's dry, but there's some there. Now, Dave, we've discussed the freaky weather.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to go to the resurrection, which brings us to page number. We've got several show notes here, guys, so bear with us. Okay, this is the show notes for show number 96, Death, and then Resurrection. Here we go. Beautiful. White gold powder, new player. Aha. Page number 8, sir.
Page number 8 of document number.
The show number.
I've got it here.
Okay.
I'm only kidding.
Good, sir. Now, we do have the documents on display on the website, which Dave keeps in top shape. Thank you, sir. He does a fantastic job. Now, it might seem incongruent to now jump to this topic here. It's not really, because Dave and I believe that everything is connected, and everything has meaning within our world. The way we see the world, the way we live within it, and the way we act within it is all connected. Okay, and so every piece of information that you get gets you closer to understanding the whole picture. And I'm not pretending that I do, and I'm not sure that Dave would either, but we were trying to understand what's going on. We've spoken about immortality, we've spoken about longevity, extreme longevity. We haven't really, and we've also spoken about reincarnation, we have not discussed resurrection. Now, resurrection for most of you is probably just a term that applies to the Christian faith. Not so. Okay, there are a whole bunch of other resurrected entities, right, Dave?
Mm-hmm.
Throughout history, essentially.
Yeah, that's so true.
Now, the concept of resurrection is literally a living being coming back to life after death. Not reincarnation, no, not being born again in a way, right?
It's a having died,
die,
and coming back to life
in the same body. That's the key thing here. Okay, so that's really the key thing that you die and then your body comes back to life, zombie fashion, if that helps you. Now, the resurrection of the dead is a standard belief within Abrahamic religions, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Okay, in a number of ancient religions, a life, death, rebirth deity is a deity which dies and resurrects. The death and resurrection of Jesus, of course, is central to the belief of Christianity.
It's also a belief in the resurrection of the individual soul that is correct. Current and ongoing.
Correct, sir. That's exactly right. Most Christians believe that Jesus' resurrection was in a material body. A small minority, the Gnostics, specifically believe it was spiritual. There are documented rare cases of the return to life of the clinically dead, which are classified scientifically as examples of the Lazarus syndrome. And the term actually originates from the Bible, of all places, where Lazarus was resurrected, in fact, by Jesus himself. So Jesus was not the first to be resurrected, even in the Bible, as we will see in a little while. What do the ancient religions in the Near East tell us, sir?
The concept of resurrections is found in the writings of some ancient non-Abrahamic religions in the Middle East. A few extant Egyptian and Canaanite writings allude to dying and rising gods, such as Osiris and Baal. Sir James Fraser, in his book The Golden Bow, relates to these dying and rising gods, but many of his examples, according to various scholars, distort the sources, taking a more positive position. Who's that? Trigve
Mettinger, I think.
Mettinger argues in his recent book, that the category of rise and return to life is significant for the following deities. You may as well read those, Mickey.
Okay, there's the Ugaritic Baal, Melkart, Adonis, Eshmun, Osiris, and Dumuzi. And then for some of these, we have the detail here for you as well as Lemminken, which is interesting. So there are a number of gods that were meant to have been slain and then were resurrected, predating the resurrection of Jesus, as it were. Right? So there's the cult of Osiris, who was a god chiefly of regeneration, rebirth, big surprise, and he had a particularly strong interest in the concept of immortality. The cult is of Osiris. Plutarch, one of the historians of ancient times, recounts one version of the myth in which Set, who was the brother of Osiris, along with the queen of Ethiopia, conspired with 72 accomplices to plot the assassination of Osiris. Set fooled Osiris into getting into a box, which Set then shut, sealed with lead, and threw into the Nile, and supposedly killed him that way. Osiris' wife Isis searched for his remains until she finally found them embedded in a tamarind tree trunk, which was holding up the roof of a palace in Byblos on the Phoenician coast. She managed to remove the coffin and open it, but Osiris was already dead. In one version of the myth, she used a spell learned from her father and brought him back to life so he could impregnate her. Afterwards, he died again and she hid his body in the desert. Months later, she gave birth to Horus. While she raised Horus, Set was hunting one night and came across the body of Osiris. Enraged, he tore the body into 14 pieces and scattered them throughout the land. Isis gathered up all parts of the body, minus the private part, which was eaten by catfish, and bandaged them together for proper burial. The gods were impressed by the devotion of Isis and resurrected Osiris as the god of the underworld. Because of his death and resurrection, Osiris was associated with the flooding and retreating of the Nile, and thus with the crops along the river Nile Valley. So, like the coming and going of the seasons and so forth. So, that's Osiris. And what happened to him? So he was in fact resurrected a number of times, and again predating the Christian mythology there as well. Then we have Lemminken. Now I'll read that as well because the pronunciation is horrendous.
I love your pronunciations, Mekki. Do you remember there was a comedy show and it was he was naming all of the European football or soccer names.
Oh, yeah. That was
hilarious. On Fast Forward. Now, Mekki, you do such a good job. I'd have to read all of these and rehearse them all well in advance of the show to get it right, like all good anchors. But you just do it off the bat, and it's perfect. I love it.
Well, I'm sure that some natives will tell us differently, but anyway, let's keep going with Lemminki, who is a prominent figure in Finnish mythology. He's one of the heroes of the Kalevala, where his character is a composition of several separate heroes of oral poetry. He's usually depicted as young and good-looking. The original mythological Lemminkainen is a shamanistic figure. In the Kalevala, he has been blended together with epic war heroes Kaukomieli and Ahti Saarelainen. Okay. In one myth, he drowns in the river Tuonela, which is the underworld, in trying to capture or kill the black swan that lives there as part of an attempt, as Ilmarinen once made, to win a daughter of Louhi as his wife. Now, I don't expect you to know all the Finnish mythology. We're coming to the important part in a second. In a tale which is somewhat reminiscent of Isis' search for Osiris, Lemminkinen's mother searches heaven and earth to find her son. Finally, she learns of his fate and asks Ilmarinen to fashion her a rake of copper with which to dredge her son's body from the river of Tuonela, remember, the underworld. Thus equipped, she descends into the underworld in search of her son, and on the banks of the river of the underworld, she rakes up first Lemminkenen's tunic and shoes, and then his maimed and broken body. Unrelenting, she continues her work until every piece of Lemminkenen's body is recovered, and sewing the parts back together, offering praise to the gods, the mother tries to restore him to life. But while she succeeds in remaking the body, his life is still absent. Then she entreats thee to ascend the halls of the overgod, Ukko, and fetch from there a drop of honey as ointment that would bring Lemminkinen back to life. Only with such a potent remedy is the hero finally restored. So you can see the same kind of theme again of a god dying and then being resurrected. In this case, not by his wife, but rather by his mother with the aid, and this is interesting, Dave, right? Of this honey-like ointment from the overgod, Ukko. And we discussed this as well in the past, where maybe this resurrection bit is not as far-fetched as we think. Again, science fiction movies have these medical beds, right, which can, I guess, rejuvenate your body and make you live again. Maybe this is something very similar. Do you want Gullveig, sir?
Yeah, sure. In Norse mythology, Gullveig is a being who was speared by Acer, burnt
the Acer,
and burnt 3 times, and yet thrice reborn. 3 fingers I'm holding up for the webcammers.
Yes, you are.
Upon her third rebirth, Gullveig's name becomes. Go ahead, Mackie.
No. Hater.
Hater. Good on you.
Hater.
And she's described as knowledgeable and skillful. She is solely attested in the Poetic Edda, compiled in the 13th century from earlier traditional materials. Scholars have variously proposed that Gullveig, or Hedda, is the same figure as the goddess Freya. That Gullveig's death may have been connected to corruption by way of gold among Essa, and or Gullveig's treatment by the Aesir may have led to the war.
That's right. That's right. No, again, the key thing here is that this resurrection mythology again predates or parallels the Christian mythology as well. In fact, ancient Greek religion was full of people that were immortal and resurrected from the dead. In ancient Greek, so they were in fact they were made physically immortal by being resurrected. If you get my drift. So you died, you were resurrected, and when you were resurrected, not reborn, you were now immortal. For example, Asclepius was killed by Zeus, only to be resurrected and transformed into a major deity. Achilles, after being killed, was snatched from his funeral pyre by his divine mother Thetis and resurrected, brought to an immortal existence in either Luz, the Elysian Plains, or the Islands of the Blessed. Memnon, who was killed by Achilles, seems to have received a similar fate. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Alcmene, Castor, Heracles, and Melicertes were also among the figures sometimes considered to have been resurrected to physical immortality. According to Herodotus' histories, the 7th century BC sage Aristeas of Proconnesus was first found dead, after which his body disappeared from a locked room. Later, he found not only to have been resurrected, but to have gained immortality. Again, predating. Interesting stuff, right? Again, there's actually a reason why we share this information with you guys. I'll let Dave do the Judaism, so I'm going to quickly give you the Hinduism. A 7th century Hindu saint Sambandha prays to Shiva and resurrects Pumpavai from an urn of bones and ashes in old Kapal Shiva temple at the location of the current Santom Basilica.
Judaism, where resurrection is found. There are 3 explicit examples in the Hebrew Bible of people being resurrected from the dead. The prophet Elijah prays and God raises a young boy from death. That's number 1 Kings 17 through 24. Elisha raises the son of Shumanant, of a Shumanite woman. Is that right, Mickey?
Correct, sir.
Yep. This was the very same child whose birth was previously foretold. She raises the son, the son of the woman. And also, a dead man's body was thrown into the dead Elisha's tomb, is resurrected when the body touches Elisha's bones. Wow, so she became, maybe a tool or a portal, or whatever, and maybe a proximity thereabouts, and that's in 2 Kings 13:21.
Yep. So again, predating the Jesus resurrection, we've got more resurrections, most of which Dave has already mentioned. There's also the resurrection of the widow of Nain's son. Jesus. You had this one. You had this one as well. Lazarus. This might be interesting. Lazarus had been in the grave for 4 days. 4 days, not 3. When Jesus approached his tomb, Jesus asked the people to take away the stone, because back then in those days it was more like a crypt, if you will. So there was like a cave, and you just rolled a big stone in front of it. That's in fact where Jesus was buried as well. Jesus called out, "Lazarus, come forth," and Lazarus came out, still wrapped in the strips of cloth. People had to help him out of them. So in fact, Jesus resurrected Lazarus prior to his own miraculous resurrection. There are actually a number of others as well, which is interesting. And the most interesting one, I think, Dave, this is the last one, the men raised up on Jesus' death. And this is from the Bible, of course, again. When Jesus died, this is from Matthew 27:51-53. When Jesus died, there was a violent earthquake, and the veil in the temple was torn from top to bottom. The Bible says tombs were opened, and many bodies of saints arose from the dead. It says that after Jesus' resurrection, they went into Jerusalem, where many people witnessed their return to life. So, and while it is the cornerstone of the Christian faith, in fact, without it, there isn't a Christian faith. It seems the event itself, the resurrection itself, is not as unique as one would have us believe. Mm-hmm. And that's really the point we're trying to bring. Not trying to disparage anything, not saying anything is it is or isn't.
Whether it's real or not real, we're not doing that.
We're pointing out this is what it says. Okay?
Do you know what? You can't have life and death without having resurrection. These topics fit together as pieces of the puzzle. That's really what they do.
I agree with you, and also because the show we're going to have for you in 3 weeks' time, Australia Day in Australia.
Show number 100.
Show number 100 when Dave and I will be co-located, which is on January 26th. Mm-hmm. We will try to connect everything that we have spoken to you about up to this point, and it will make sense when we come to this point where the human body, any physical body in this particular reality matrix, may very well just be that, a vessel. And a lot of people speak about our bodies as vessels for our spirit, and I think that's a very telling kind of thing, because ask yourself this, right? And this is where I'm going to stop talking afterwards. If you're in your body, right? You're Bob or Jane or whatever, and I cut your legs off. You're still you. You're still Bob or Jane, I would imagine, right? I cut your arms off, and you're still Bob or Jane, less arms and legs. I will cut off most of your things and will keep you artificially alive with a whole bunch of machinery, so your head is still there. Okay, so you're still Bob or Jane. So your body does not represent you. It's only your motive, I guess, expression for this particular reality matrix. So it's how you get around, right? If I destroy your head, your brain, well, you could. I'm breaking the link to this reality. I'm cutting off all sensory input that you might get, because I believe that your brain is a 3-dimensional, even 4-dimensional shadow interface, right, to a higher dimensional reality. What does that mean? Okay, what does it mean? It means that you are much greater than what you see or can comprehend at this point. Your brain is an interface. It is almost like an avatar when you play a computer game. Right? Think of it that way, in fact. It is how you get information about this world to wherever you actually are. And I'm not saying you're not here, but you're not here. You're here in a different layer and still imprisoned. I know it sounds very esoteric, and I apologize for that. But the point is that all the information that you get about this particular reality, about this world, is only coming to you through your senses. Okay? Specifically, vision, your ears, taste, touch. That's how you form a picture about the world. There's nothing else. Your brain doesn't interface directly with the world. It doesn't. It just takes the impulses it receives and translates them into, I guess, a 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional, if you take time, reality in your head. So where are you? Where are you? Exactly where are you? Are you sitting in the middle of your brain? Or are you sitting outside or inside the brain? Because there's an old koan, which is like a Zen, I guess, riddle. Where do you go when your enemies come from the front and the back, from the left, the right, and from up and below? Where do you go? Where do you go?
Good question. Where do you go?
Inside. Yeah, exactly. Right. So the answer is you go within. So your way out of this reality matrix is in. And I can't tell you where your escape hatch is. I know where it is, but I can't tell you where it is. Maybe I'll tell you on show number 100. But there is an escape hatch built into you. Built into you. You know it. You've heard about it. You laugh at it. Maybe even you think it's superstition, but it's there. You must focus within, because everything without is just a distraction. Listen to the sages of the time. Listen to all the holy people. Listen to all the things that were told us, all the mystical things and all the other things as well. Even science will tell you this. Quantum physics, if nothing else, tells us that what we see here is very arbitrary. Okay? Might be a hologram, might not be. We've spoken about this. Guys, focus within if you want to get out of this. Right? And I'll leave it there, at least this particular thread. That's why resurrection is important, because they don't want us to live here, whoever they might be. And I don't know what the purpose of us being here is. I really don't, but there's a purpose, there's a reason, otherwise we wouldn't be here. It's quite obvious. And the most brutal manifestation of their need of us is the visitations that some of you experience. Okay? And in fact, past life memories of these visitations. Why? Don't know.
That was a very good Vulcan. Why? It's crazy. I've been. Do you know, Meki? I just wanted to say to Michio Kaku, come on our show, you get better ratings. Also, take that BBC World Service and American Freedom Radio.
Yes, you're right.
Come and try and beat us. Thanks so much. Do you know what, Meki? Today's show, we had to put this in. We had to put this stuff in today because of the 100th show, like Meki said. We are coming up on the 100th, and it's going to make a lot more sense if we haven't, having brought this to you now, rather than trying to squeeze it somewhere else. I think it all made sense today, and it's going to make a whole bunch of sense. And do you know what? This live streaming, Meki, I think it's going pretty well. The only thing that everyone is talking about, why can't we do a split screen with Meki?
Well, I don't know.
I just don't. I don't have the virtual camera being able to take it. So, Meki, if we were doing a video stream between us, I might have been able to take what Skype is showing and put it through. So, it's still early days for us on this. This is only a second show. The first one was 2 weeks ago, and it was just preliminary, and this one is much better. So we've got all the audio nailed down now. Now it's just to add the second video. But on the 100th, we'll be in the same location, and we'll both be on air. All right, so we're looking forward to doing something like that. The next thing after that is having a slide deck and some, what are they called? Inset. So we can have some inset graphics and stuff when we're talking.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, and look, guys, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for giving us these ratings. I mean, again, I still think Dave and I are just chatting to ourselves here, to be honest with you, right? But it's just, there you go.
Hey, thanks for listening to show number 97. If you're listening to this on YouTube, check out our other shows. Check out all of our stuff. Thank you. We'll see you next week for another Shiny Side Out with Dave.
And Mickey.
Peace out.